This show is brought to you by listeners and viewers like you. EvanX.com Tesla accessories, our TeslaOwnersOnline.com community, and our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/TeslaOwnersOnline. Oh, the 2021 test calendar. Very nice. Care to show us a little preview, Eric?
Yes. So are we recording?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I wanted to give a shout out tonight. I received the 2021 test calendar. So I want to mention this for the show. The most important thing about this calendar is that it does raise funds for the Rails to Trails Conservatory. The Rails to Trails Conservatory, what they do is they take old rail lines and they convert them into trails for cyclists, for runners, for joggers, walkers, that sort of thing. So it's a very big cause. So every calendar you buy supports that cause. So the cool thing is, on the back of the calendar, they have all these awesome advertisers. Our friend Ian is right here, dead center. Evolveware is a sponsor. Yes. But we also have several sponsors in here. But the cool thing about this calendar is when you open it up, there's great photography that is submitted by Tesla owners around. There's all kinds of photos in here, really high quality imaging. And then the calendar features all kinds of crucial dates, both major holidays and events in Tesla's history.
Oh, nice.
Based on the year and the critical event of that day. So for example, coming up in January of next year, January 4th of 2021, in 2017, Tesla announced the 2170 cell mass production line. So it's really cool, all kinds of great photos. Get your calendar, like, again, beautiful shots like this of the Model Y. Look at this.
Yes.
So, yes, you can find this online, get yourself. It's a great stocking stuffer right now. Again, proceeds help to benefit the Rails to Trails Conservatory. Get your edition now. The 2021 test calendar available now.
Thanks, Eric. Great way to start the show.
How about that?
I hope everybody is doing well. I had a good Thanksgiving. No events, majorities.
No events. Masked, definitely, for Thanksgiving.
Lots of turkey.
Not me.
How about you, Sean?
I was kidless, and so I had the house to myself. And I talked to family by FaceTime in the morning, and I took a 4-hour nap in the afternoon, and it couldn't have been better.
That voice you hear is Sean Mitchell. He has a YouTube channel called All Things EV. He's a good friend of ours, and I thought I'd have him on the show tonight because we want to have a discussion about the state of the EV business, competition with Tesla and stuff. So I thought I'd bring him on. He has a hard cutoff time of about an hour, so we're going to try and get through this as quickly as we can. So having said that, let's just get in. We're not going to do too much Tesla news other than the fact that the stock is doing great. All's good. Everything is awesome. Other than that, we'll have some more news next week. But anyways, so I thought I'd take some time and ask Sean some questions because he's pretty well versed in things other than just Tesla. Namely, he spent some time with the guys at Rivian. So I think maybe we should begin there. We're curious to see what your position is on Rivian. I have my own thoughts and opinions about the guys. I like the fact that in a lot of ways they're taking a little bit more of a traditional car maker's approach to developing their cars rather than rush them to market and fix problems later. We saw quite a bit of really interesting tidbits about their cars during the wonderful Apple-produced series of Ian.
Long way up.
Thank you. I drew a blank there for a second. Where, I mean, it was, the motorcycles were made by Harley Davidson's, but the support trucks were 2 of the Rivian prototypes, the first serial number. And they were quite
first 2.
Yeah. And it was really interesting because we found out quite a bit of stuff. I mean, they kind of glossed over some of the issues they might have had with the cars, but as prototypes, they did phenomenally well. So, Sean, you visited the guys at Rivian. You've talked to RJ Scaringe. What's your thought about the company and where they're going? I mean, we do have some user-submitted questions. We'll get to those maybe a little bit later as we go. So the floor is yours, Sean. Tell us what you think about Rivian.
Yeah, first, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and it's good to see familiar faces. Rivian, I've always been very encouraged by them. My first introduction to them, they reached out to me before they had ever revealed their vehicles, before the public had ever seen them. They thought that the Tesla owner audience here in Colorado was a great sort of test base for getting feedback on how we Coloradans use our electric vehicles in the mountains. So they were sort of pulling information together and trying to validate what they thought people use their electric vehicles for in the outdoors. And it was me, and I think it was maybe one or two other owners, Tesla owners, a part of the Tesla Owners Club here in Denver, that were just providing feedback on where we felt like Teslas were limited, where the limits were sort of reached in terms of capabilities, and where we felt comfortable taking our Teslas being sort of a high gloss, high finish, very refined vehicle, not really meant to get dirty, but meant to just look pristine and clean and elegant. And so that was, I'm trying to think of what year that was. So now it's been 2 years since they revealed their vehicles. So it was probably a year before that. So 2017. And then I got a chance to go to their headquarters the following year, see their vehicles. They didn't have I think that they just had the clay models, the full-size clay models at that time. And I've had a chance to get to know many of them, both executive level as well as those that are working below that. I think they're a fantastic group. They really have a lot of heart and passion behind the vehicles. They've got they understand who their core audience is, right? They're targeting the outdoor crowd. They want to attract the people who would buy a Jeep or maybe something a little bit more rugged than that where they're taking it to do off-roading or to spend multiple days in the wilderness. So I'm very encouraged by what they're doing. They just released their pricing, and I thought that for the price for what you get maybe was a little bit disappointing, but if you're reaching an audience that maybe has not been introduced into electric vehicles, maybe they don't care for Tesla for one reason or another, they don't know much about Tesla, they're going from a gas vehicle to an electric vehicle, and all they've had is a Ford or a Jeep, they may not be as particular about how much it costs versus what the range is. I do wish that their vehicles were a little bit less expensive, to try and attract more of a crowd, but it seems like that's everyone's predicament at the moment. I'm mostly optimistic about the company and mostly optimistic about what they're accomplishing. They certainly are well funded, which will bode well for them in the near term as well as the long term.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I had a look at their configurator there just last week. I was poking around. Boy, there's some really nice stuff happening. As far as pricing, yeah, if you get into the high end, yeah, you're getting into some big numbers and stuff. But even the base configuration that I was looking at was pretty much what I had spent on my Model X. So I thought, for a vehicle like that, I don't think it's that far off. I mean, yeah, the 800-pound gorilla's coming there with the Cybertruck. That's a different thing altogether. But I think Rivian was actually really smart to actually focus on the market that's emerging, which is, the pickup truck and the activity vehicle sector, because up until recently, it's only been, basically sedans and stuff. So I think they've got a good market. However, they've been delayed, about 6 months? They were originally supposed to be beginning of next year. So it's pushed to about the middle of next year. Pandemic.
Correct.
Yeah. But I think it's going to start heating up next year. We got Cybertruck coming, the F-150 electric version. There's the Hummer coming. Who knows what else GM's got up their sleeve as far as other cars are coming. So I think it's going to be a very interesting sector as far as that's coming. We did have one question I thought I would just throw at you here. Someone had asked us, do you know what Rivian's plans are for charging infrastructure?
Yeah, I know a little bit about that. They're going to use existing charging infrastructure, so non-Tesla charging infrastructures, but you'll probably see some news at some point here soon where Rivian will be installing Rivian branded charging stations, mostly to address the more of the extreme or wilderness areas where people, parks, where they want people to go.
Destination level 2 stuff.
I don't know what the charging speed will be, but they're definitely thinking in that. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they start to build out a charging network. Maybe it's fast charging, but build out a charging network where you wouldn't typically see fast chargers. So, for example, Electrify America, Electrify Canada, Tesla charging network are all along major highways where you would do sort of road tripping, but Rivian wants you to get out into the outdoors. So I could see them building out a charging infrastructure where it's much more remote, where you might see trails or, outdoor activities, whitewater rafting. They want to think in that direction. So I think we'll probably hear some stuff like that at some point soon. To the extent of where they'll take it, or what sort of volume they'll do. I wouldn't be surprised if they start to focus on, so if Tesla's going left, Rivian's probably going to go right and build out more of a rural network for their vehicles.
Well, we do know that if you want to drive down to South America, they've got a lot of spots you can use.
Yes.
The other thing that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people don't appreciate that.
Ian got frozen.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of people, I don't think, realized, if you watched Long Way Up, did I? Oh, okay. But on Long Way Up, it was Rivian that was, I think, responsible for doing a lot of the charger installation along that route all through South America. They really, really and went to a great degree to involve themselves in that project, not just providing the vehicles, but actually setting up all that charging infrastructure. So to Sean's point, you can see that's kind of like a little future glimpse of what they're going to be doing. Imagine driving around in the desert out there, like in the Atacama Desert, and there's literally nothing for like 100 miles, and whoop, there's a little charging station. I mean, how awesome would that be? To see that in like national parks and like out in, in the deserts and forests and so on. I think it's so cool. I mean, I hope that's the direction they go. It'll be such a big boon. I mean, because I think for most people in that segment, that would be their concern. Even for me, who's already drank the Kool-Aid, I'd be kind of like, how far do I have to go before I get to civilization again?
How they'll facilitate
it's a great way to address it.
If there's no electrical grid, because they want people to go into the outdoors. So how extreme will they be with that? Will they be using solar and batteries to store energy? And maybe in that case, it would be a level 2 charge rate.
Well, I will mention something, because one of the things I noticed, and they didn't really spend a lot of time on it, but there was a situation during the show on Long Way Up where they did a V2V charge. They charged the motorcycles. They brought out a box, plugged it into the truck, and they were able to charge. I mean, Teslas can't do that. So I thought that was quite interesting. So I think for people that have activity vehicles, maybe electric dirt bikes or an ATV or something like that, they'll be able to pull from the Rivian battery to be able to charge it. I think that's a really cool feature of the cars. They don't talk about it too much, but I think there's definitely some possibilities there.
Most people have probably seen and heard about their patent that they filed for a digital jerry can. So they've got some interesting and creative ways to extend the range of these vehicles, especially if they're going to be in rural and in extreme places like that. So adding extra battery packs to the back of to the bed of the truck to extend in the range would give them the ability to power some of these other utility vehicles that one might use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited about Rivian. The more I watch them, the more I see they keep their nose to the grindstone. They do what they do. They don't talk a lot of hoopla and stuff. And I like the fact, in a lot of ways, that they're operating more like a traditional auto manufacturer. They're taking the time to test the vehicles, to really get them right before they actually start full-scale production. Tesla's a great company and all, but in a lot of ways, sometimes they tend to rush the cars to market, and I understand that their mentality is to build it as best they can and then get it in production and then fix the problems later. But, long-term for a company, and I think for Rivian, it's really important because, when Tesla first started, they had no other products, so they had to make sure the Model S was really, really good out the door. Yeah, they had the Roadster, but that's a side thing. I think Rivian is kind of like the same way. They're like Tesla starting all over again. The first product has to be right, and they have to get it just perfect. So I'm glad that they're taking that approach and making sure that the car is going to be excellent out the door. If it wasn't for the Cybertruck, I'll be honest with you, the Rivian is what I would be looking at. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. I suspect that looking at the board of directors that they have, and the ties to traditional automotive, I suspect that the build quality of these vehicles will be significantly better right out the gate.
I would agree with you on that.
I'm optimistic about that, and I really do hope that sort of Tesla rises with the tide, and you've got some of these other automakers who are shipping out just better built vehicles right off the line without as many issues. And even still today, you know, I hear of owners. In fact, a couple of days ago, I was getting some feedback from an owner who took delivery and just wasn't really that pleased that they had to take the vehicle back to get some of these issues fixed directly after taking delivery. So the ultimate goal is to relieve as much of the pressure and stress off of the actual owner. And I hope that Tesla takes some cues from companies that are a little bit more experienced in producing vehicles.
Yeah, I agree with you. Eric, did you have any questions for Sean on the Rivian situation?
No, this is really great content. I'm just honestly, like, just sitting here listening to this is really riveting.
Yes.
No, I mean, I like a lot of what. Come on. No, what I do like about what Sean was saying, and I think his logic here is great about their plans for an infrastructure for charging. It makes sense to have it in what I consider remote locations. I know there was a number of different terms we use to describe where they would be, campgrounds, parks, you know, these distant locations, but ideally remote locations in those very rural areas, as Sean pointed out. To me, that makes the most sense because in large part where Tesla is charging in very populous, dense areas where there's a lot of traffic, thoroughfares, off of highways and the like, Rivian can say, well, we're going to tap into that unique area where maybe you are an electric vehicle. And of course, you know, maybe this is using the J1772 adapters, but at least having remote locations where you can have a charging infrastructure there, even if it is, you know, on a 110 where you're getting some charging because you're camping, you're staying overnight, you're, you know, something to that effect, which a lot of these commuters, you know, these adventurers would tend to do anyway. You know, the Cybertruck owners and the like, it would make sense that would be something they'd set up. So, you know, it's from somebody who's seen a lot of the renderings and the photos of these Rivians, they're gorgeous. They're really just great. And whether or not you have an interest in them or not, it's just good that there's more competitors offering a different option for those who want to get to the EV sector, but maybe don't like a specific offering from a certain manufacturer. So, you know, now you've got more and more EVs coming online, and they're each going to fit the kind of person who wants to drive them. So that's a good thing to see.
I agree. The more the merrier. Sean, have the headlights on the Rivian grown on you yet?
No. I mean, I like the light bar, but what they call the stadium headlights, I haven't warmed up to them. I do think for whatever reason they look better on the SUV than they do on the truck. I don't know why that is, but the proportions just seem to be a little bit better on the SUV. So, you know, I would consider the SUV. At the moment, I think the vehicle that has my attention and will likely be the next purchase will be the Cybertruck, and that one did take a little while to warm up to. But I've come around to many people's surprise.
Yeah, no doubt.
I want to ask Sean one question. So we knew a couple of years ago Ford had a large investment in Rivian. I think it was a $500 million investment or something to that effect. With Ford basically saying we're kind of washing our hands of that agreement, that partnership, what do you think that means for both Ford and Rivian moving forward?
I don't know to what detail they had an agreement, how much. I don't think that they ever said, because when they made that announcement, it was a group of people where they collected funding from. So I'm not entirely sure that deal is dead. We haven't heard any news about them selling any of their stake. As far as I know, Ford still owns a stake in the company, a non-majority stake. That was made clear to me when I had this conversation with Rivian. So I think time will tell in terms of what will be implemented from Rivian into Ford, what will not, how much of Ford's vehicles will look like Rivian or act like Rivian's vehicles, One thing is clear to me, though. You've got these large, multi-billion-dollar companies taking interest in Rivian. There's a reason why they're doing that, and my guess is they have done some significant due diligence. And if you have an Amazon and a Ford and some of these other larger companies making some investments into them, taking a stake in the company, I think that's a really, really good sign. There are other companies, which I think we'll probably talk about, where there's just too many red flags to really take them seriously. And then, makes me question some of these other larger automakers who show interest in these other companies. But in terms of Ford and Rivian, I don't know for certain. This isn't based on anything that I know in terms of conversations that I've had, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's something in the works there that maybe they've just tabled for the short term.
Last question before we move on. What's your take on RJ?
Oh man, he is such a down-to-earth guy. I've talked to him on a couple of occasions now. One of them going up the side of a mountain in the gondola. In a ski lift. Yeah, in the gondola. He's a really great guy. Very approachable. You wouldn't guess if you just met him on the street or bumped into him in a grocery store. You'd have no clue that he's as smart as he is, first of all, and that he's heading up a pretty important company and leading a lot of electric vehicle technology. And I really appreciate that about him. He's very easy to talk to. He's not too big for his status. Very humble guy. It's been a little while since I've talked to him, but I still feel like I could just call him up over the phone and just catch up and see how things are going. So very approachable guy. I like that he prefers to stay behind the scenes in some ways. He could probably show a little bit more gloss just to give people a taste of how good the company really is. But
he's very
overall, he's very low key. He doesn't really want the attention. He wants the company and the employees to get the attention, which is admirable.
Yeah. That's kind of my plan. I'd love to meet the guy and pick his brains. He seems like a really, really smart guy. Very humble, like I said, down to earth and stuff. So the next company I thought we'd spend a little time in talking about is Lucid. Have you spent any time with those guys at all? And what's your take on Lucid?
Not as much as some other companies. I am in contact with them on a regular basis, and that reminds me I need to reach back out because I got an invitation to sit down with their CEO.
That's Peter Rawlinson,
hopeful.
Right?
Yes, I'm very hopeful that they've sort of done the due diligence behind the scenes. What they showed in their launch, whenever it was September, maybe it was beginning of October, was very promising. And they've also done testing. They've got prototype vehicles that have been on the road. So I think that they've got some very promising things. Do they have enough funding to really go the distance? That's still a question mark, but I'm encouraged that they've got a factory that they just finished, I think, phase 1
they did
last week.
Yeah.
I'm encouraged that they've started producing their vehicles in low volume. I think that that's the case, or at least they've got several handfuls of prototypes, but I think that they're about to go to production. And the thought and intent behind some of their technology, the way that they go into detail about it is very encouraging as well. But the funding piece is a really big factor that I certainly don't know enough about. How much money do they have? What round of funding are they in? I think I had heard that there's some Saudi backers, which is, I don't want to introduce politics into it, but in many ways, money is money, and you can always find bad things about people who are investing into the companies. So do they have enough funding to go the distance? That is my hope that they do, and that they're not going to have an issue raising funds. It's similar to Rivian. It seemed like Rivian just has had an unlimited check in terms of, or unlimited interest in terms of raising funds. I hope that Lucid's the same way.
Yeah. Well, if we contrast that, and we're not going to spend any time on this company at all, but Faraday Future, they've had nothing but financial problems, empty promises, nothing to deliver, lots of show and lots of gloss, lots of controversy with the founder of the company, and still don't have anything to show for it. So yes, financing for startups. I mean, it's easy to found a company, but to keep it going and get it into production takes an enormous amount of money. Elon's pretty fond of saying, I mean, the only companies that haven't gone bankrupt are themselves and Ford. You know, the last time a new car company was actually successful in North America was Chrysler, and that was 1925. So it's monumentally hard to get a new car company off the ground. I think in some ways it's actually a little bit easier if you have an electric car company because you don't have all that baggage, in the sense that you can't turn a GM or a Chrysler around or even a Ford around to start making EVs right off the ground. They're very well funded. They have lots of money, but they also have a large stable of products where they can cut losses across and so on and so forth. These new companies can't afford that. So they have to make sure the cars are great out the door, and they got to keep that money flowing. Even Tesla, I mean, look how long it took Tesla to get on solid financial ground, despite starting before everybody else. So yeah, I would agree with you on that. Go ahead.
I would make some assumptions there based on what they've said publicly and what they've sort of shown in terms of activity. I'd say that they're probably doing okay in terms of funding. It's, you know, they don't have an unlimited bank account, but you know, I'm even hearing some things behind the scenes, some things that I think you'll hear more about in 2021 that make me think, yeah, okay, they've got their stuff together. They're hiring in departments that you probably wouldn't do if you didn't have any money. You know, lobbying and governmental affairs, for example. That's one that you know, if you're tightly strapped, you probably aren't spending a whole lot of money on. But they're starting to put some people in positions that make me think that they've got enough funding to start to focus on some of these equally important things, but not directly contributing towards getting vehicles off the production line.
Now, I was actually kind of impressed that Peter is running the company now. For those of you who don't know, Peter Rawlinson was the chief engineer at Tesla when they were working on the Model S program. Matter of fact, if you Google Peter Rawlinson Tesla on Google, you'll see 3 different videos of him talking about the Model S during the beta stage. And you'll see, you know, he knows what he's doing. Great English guy and very low key, very well spoken to. If you watch the Lucid presentation, I remember when they first showed the Lucid Air. I think it was around 2016, shortly after the Model 3 was announced. They had brought out a prototype. They were down in California, and I thought it was very impressive. Again, at the time, it's just like, okay, can they survive? Well, so far they seem to be okay at this point. They have a beautiful car, extremely well designed. There's a lot of really neat things in there. It's got a beautiful windshield, similar to Model X. Again, very high-end car. They are not making low-end cars. They're taking the Tesla approach, starting at the high-end and maybe working their way down. So you have to be fairly well-heeled. But they're also tackling a market segment, I think, in the EV business that's not been properly looked after, and that's really the true luxury segment. You know, people sometimes erroneously call Tesla luxury cars. They're not. They're premium cars, and Tesla likes to use that term. Premium implies you're paying a little extra. It doesn't mean it's necessarily luxury. Tesla's idea of luxury is mid-century modern, which is minimalism. Lucid has a beautiful interior. They're going more of the traditional, lots of little bling and stuff, and there's a market segment that likes that. So, anyways, I think they do. I think they're going to do very well for the people that want to spend that kind of money, who may be looking at something like a Model S, but want a little more luxury. Until Tesla gets around to updating the Model S, and who knows what they're going to do with that. I have a pretty good idea. They're going to update the interior, but again, they're not going to go bling. They're going to go more Model 3. That's my personal opinion. Any other questions for Sean before we move on to the next company, guys? Ian's frozen, but I think we can still hear him talk.
No, I'm so dying for the next company because I know who it is. Am I frozen again?
Yeah, I don't know.
Come on.
That's okay.
You're in Canada. It's expected.
Yes, he's frozen. We can still hear you. That's okay. All right.
Okay. All right.
I know Sean's not here for very long, but we have to move on here. All right. How do we approach this one delicately? Nikola, yes. Okay, so we have to address the big elephant in the room because there's been a lot of noise over the last year or so, but especially since this year, when Nikola Motors, horrible name if you ask me. I mean, really riding on the coattails of Tesla on that one. But anyways, went public, no less through a reverse merger, not the usual methodology of doing things. Founder of the company is Trevor Milton, who was, when I first saw him announce that truck, the hydrogen truck, I think it was around 2016, two thoughts came to mind. One of them was, well, this is dumb, hydrogen. There's no infrastructure for that. And second of all, who the hell is this guy? He came across as really brash, not very humble, kind of brash, young. And, of course, famously got on Twitter and tried to out Elon in every shape, way, and form. Loved to drop names. Managed to take the company public, raised a lot of money, but essentially on a company that's pretty much vaporware at this point. And, of course, back in September, if I remember correctly, or was it August, when we had that scathing report by Hindenburg Research, who basically exposed a lot of fraud with this company. Now, Sean, whether you call it lucky or not, actually got an invite by Trevor Milton, along with a few other key people in the Tesla community, to come down to their factory. It's in Scottsdale. Phoenix, right? Okay. And had a chance to meet with Trevor and have a little sit down and a fireside chat with him. Got to see the building and what they're working on. So I thought it would be a good opportunity because he's the only guy that I know personally who's actually had some exposure to Nikola, like face to face. So having seen, what had happened and what had transpired and your experience before all this SHIT hit the fan with these guys, I want your take on what your impressions were as like coming in as a Tesla owner, what you saw, and of course now after the repercussions of everything happened, like what is your opinion now and what's going on? FineLab has a line of protective coatings that were engineered to protect your Tesla's paint, leather, carpet, plastic, and wheels, effectively blocking all those UV rays and environmental factors before they ever get to ruin your brand new baby. FineLab offers a complete line of car care products and ceramic coatings for both the do-it-yourselfer and professional detailers. Did we mention we also have the world's first self-healing coating? Check us out at finelab.com, that's spelled FEYNLAB, to see the science behind the self-healing. Check out our product catalog and click Contact Us for a free quote from a certified installer in your area. FineLab and Tesla, we were meant for each other.
Yeah, Nikola, as Trevor calls it.
What
there's
is
a lot
it?
of
Is it
odd things
Nikola or
about.
Nikola?
Well, he says Nikola, so I sort of feel obligated to say it the way the founder says it. There's a lot of really odd things about the company. Going into it, I really wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. There were many people on Twitter that wanted the whole group that went there to go in guns blazing and call out every wrong thing that they thought the company was doing. And looking back, I mean, they were very hospitable. They were very, very kind. I was pleasantly surprised by how approachable Trevor was. They showed us around. They let us ride in their Nikola 2. It's a very difficult thing to talk about. There's just, they don't have, here's sort of like my bottom line with the company. They've said a lot of things, but they haven't done a lot of things. And, you could say that it's because they're a fraudulent company and they're intentionally misleading people, or you could say that they're just overly optimistic and over-promising and under-delivering. And, the longer time that goes by between some of the things that Trevor has said and what's happened since the Hindenburg research, since they published their research,
And some of the things that have not materialized, like the GM and Nikola agreement
I
or
checked,
partnership.
by the way, the Badger is still on their website, even though it was canceled.
Yeah. There's just a lot that does not line up about the company. And the longer time that goes on, the more suspicious it makes the company look. And, you can infer and read into some things, about stock compensation and them trying to sort of push things out until they get compensated. And that very well could be the case, that they're just trying to kick the can down the road so that they can get paid. The bottom line is they really haven't done much. They keep talking about the Nikola tray in Europe. They keep talking about the refueling infrastructure that's going to go in here in the U.S. They've talked about the construction of their manufacturing facility that still to this day they haven't done anything. They've moved a little bit of dirt, but they have not broken ground. And so it's like, oh, we're going to get to that. Oh, it's coming. We're about to start that. Oh, it's coming right away. But then you don't see anything. And so it just is a very odd company that, like, when you piece everything together, the company just does not materialize into much. Like, I would love for them to prove me wrong. I would love for them to prove everyone wrong. But to date, all they have is a lot of talk and a lot of hot air.
Well, it was a bit of a red flag when the moment they went public, Milton went and collected $70 million worth of shares right away and bought himself that big ranch, private jet. And this whole Hindenburg thing came down. Of course, he was, talking up the company ever since they went public and trying to, drum up interest and money and stuff. And I thought it was interesting, of course, that GM would have done this kind of letter of intent and stuff. And now, of course, now that they're backing away from the whole thing, you'd think a company like that would do a little bit more due diligence. But at the end of the day, this report comes out, which, of course, if you haven't read it, is scathing. And everything that they've put in there, I mean, some of the stuff that came down, they made claims about, the Nikola truck, and I forget which one it was, but
the one.
Yeah, the one where it looked like, it was driving under its own power. No, it wasn't. It was going down a low-grade hill. And people actually went out in desert and actually found the location and proved that that's exactly what's going on. Insiders, there's lots of insider leaks and stuff as to what was going on behind the scenes. But anyways, the report comes out, and then Milton steps down as CEO, and then he's dead. I mean, first of all, he says, well, we're gonna refute all these claims. They never did. Mm-hmm. And then he steps down, and he's disappeared off the face of the planet. His ranch is for sale. Probably the jet's for sale. So I don't know if he's lawyered up and they've told him to shut up or whatever the case may be. But it's like you got this entity now that's essentially headless. And I don't, a company like Nikola or any others really, I mean, you need a key person. Right? They need an Elon type of personality, a Steve Jobs kind of guy, a figurehead of some form, really, to be like that. And unfortunately, since Milton left, they have nothing. Not a single spokesperson has come forward, or anybody has come forward to talk about what's going on at the company. It's just like things went dead, and of course, not to mention what their stock price is doing right now. So, anyways, I personally don't have a lot of faith. I always thought that it was a little shifty, just the way he operated. And when I read that report, I was just like, holy cow, if any bit of this is true, it just really paints him and the company in a very bad, well, the company by extension, because it was all about Milton, right? Because if you really read what was going on, he was a pretty, allegedly, I should use that term, because that's what Stephen Mark Ryan likes to do, allegedly. He's a pretty shifty guy. So, I don't know, guys. I want you to chime in on this thing. I want your take on the whole Nikola thing and where you think it's going.
Well, I can't possibly add anything to the story. I mean, the whole thing is so bizarre.
It's
and I think
it's
the
so
Hindenburg,
Kafkaesque,
thing, sort of the Hindenburg report really sort of told this tale and really took the wrappers off it as far as I was concerned. Like the blinders were gone at that point. The one thing I just want to throw out there is I really want to congratulate Sean for how he comported himself in the lead up to, during that visit, and the incredible amount of hate that came down on you afterwards.
Actually, the whole, everybody on that thing got, there was a lot of stuff that went down behind the scenes.
Yeah, that was kind of a low point, as far as I was concerned for the Tesla community. And I realized it was just a very small number of the community that sort of went after you guys for not, exactly like you're saying, for not going in guns blazing or not drawing blood. But I've never seen you publicly ever lose it. And that's the closest I ever saw. And you still somehow kept it together. I was very impressed by that, because I couldn't believe what people were saying. And you were just being just normal, civil. I think you asked a lot of the right questions. You handled it very professionally. And for some reason, people held you out to dry for that. I think that's ridiculous,
Sean holds us together, guy. I think he's got a pretty good his affinity for marshmallows, I think, helps.
Yeah, I did play around. I did sort of take advantage of that, and to kind of poke the bear a little bit with my intro and my recap to the visit. But it definitely I saw a really ugly side of people, and that was really disappointing. People might wonder, well, why weren't you harder on Nikola? Why didn't you call Trevor out on his lies? And first of all, it was very well scripted. That day was scripted from beginning to end. Mm. And it wasn't like there was just this open time frame for us to sit down and just fire away at will. There were some times where we could ask questions, but I felt in many ways like I was trying to insert the things that I really wanted to know as we were walking from, one part of the office to the other. And people got really upset that I didn't explicitly say that they're a fraudulent company. The important thing for me, and this is just in general with my personality, I think it was really important for me to go in and just sort of look at things objectively. If I knew nothing, just ask questions and try and learn, and really, really come at it with a humble heart. My plan was to go back again to the office, to their office, and sit down with Trevor, and really then get some pointed questions across. That obviously never happened, and things sort of unraveled very quickly with the company. But I as a human being receiving a lot of the vitriol and hatred, it certainly wore on me. And if you were a fly on the wall with some of the discussions that we were having with everyone who went, some of the private conversations we were having, it definitely wore on everyone. And I had to. There were some moments where I had to just delete Twitter, because I wanted to sort of respond to every single critical and unfair statement about me, and it was having an impact on my psyche and my emotion. And I was not happy, and I was sad and depressed, and not sleeping very well, because people were saying just really, really angry things. And anyway, so it was certainly a dark side to people on the internet. And you can disagree. It's completely normal to disagree. Mm-hmm. But when you start attacking someone for one thing or another, because you disagree with them or because they're not in alignment, I think that's when it crosses the line. And in regards to this industry, the electric vehicle industry, it very much was EV shaming. It's like, it's tribalism. It's EV tribalism. When you start to get so ugly and so vindictive and so mean that you're attacking someone for not holding the same opinion that you do. It reminds me of politics and religion a little bit. So I'm glad that we're past that. And I did kind of, I went my recap video was probably not as hard as what people wanted. Mm-hmm. And I did go back again and do another video and be a little bit more explicit that I don't support the company, and I don't support what's going on. And I can always go back again and provide some additional clarity, but people got really ugly and it was really sad.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's really it's difficult to hear this coming from you, because I sort of relate to the emotional side of this, right? I'm if you're familiar with the show, I'm very opinionated, but I have a lot of good heart, good meaning behind what I say. And it's usually coming from a place where I care for other people. And so sometimes people misconstrue the tenor in which I say something as being misguided or misdirected, when ideally it's coming from a place of good care and good consideration. And so, Sean, to your point, we are in a strange environment since the advent of social media, mm-hmm. where the very opinions that we may not in face-to-face interactions really say to someone who we do not know. We may know someone's online Twitter handle, their Facebook page, and the latter, or and the like rather, but it doesn't mean we actually know them. And these online personas do not comport with who the people really are in life. We know that many of us put an image on social media to show a very small sliver of our opinions, our interactions, our daily experiences, and a lot of other stuff. Good 90% of our livelihood is not really put on for public show. So when you put out the content you do regarding Nikola, and there are folks who very strongly opinionated want to see the company fail, see these leading news headlines and want to, see a certain outcome. And they see folks like you who are very public facing, I think, in some regard, and have a very different perspective. Like you said, going in open-minded, just to kind of see, I hear this chorus out here. I want to see, does that comport with what the company believes is going to happen? And so going in open-minded allows you to say, listen, I'm not going to listen to that noise. I'm going to hear it directly from the horse's mouth, and then formulate an opinion hearing it from them directly. But so many folks don't want to hear that. They don't want to take the opportunity to learn that. And you can't spell evil without EV, right? Like, so to have that community en masse come out with such vitriol and negativity towards you or a company or anyone. I mean, we know there are the Elon supporters. We know there are Elon haters. There's not a lot of people in between. Like me, I'm indifferent. Elon can be Elon. It doesn't affect my life every day. I'm not going to immerse myself in Elon Twitter news all the time. What he tweets at 3 o'clock in the morning is his business. I don't care. But there are some folks who make a living writing stories on every 5-word tweet that he puts out there. And the thing that I'm sort of taken these steps to do lately, and I'm sure you've done this too, you mentioned that you sort of kind of signed off Twitter for a while. It's good for me to be so disconnected while everyone wants to be connected in this COVID environment, because I'm finding that a lot of people are resorting to social media to voice some discontent or some feeling about something going on, when in my mind, there's such greater things to appreciate and admire and take hold of right now. Our loved ones, those who are sick, those who are working the front lines in the hospitals. I mean, those are the things that I would rather focus my time on than what some odd, Dave M169437 on Twitter has to say, right? All these bots and stuff. So you're right. It's weird that we want to see, there are people out there who want to see, let's just call them competitors of Tesla, to fail. And I pulled the stat up as we were talking to the show tonight. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, I'm not sure if you guys know this. This is fantastic stuff. About 20% of new businesses fail within the first 2 years of being open across all industries. 45% within the first 5 years, and 65% within the first 10 years. Only 25% of new businesses survive 15 years or more. So even if you look at an automotive sector, which is tough to succeed, and Elon will tell you it's crazy to do that, the restaurant sector right now, it's normally really bad to make a restaurant survive for a long time. They're dying now. Movie theaters may soon be extinct as far as we know it with online social content. So the sums all thing up. It's just we're in a very different place. But I would love to see more people put the phones down, maybe not tweet that tweet you want to send out, maybe not be so negative. If you have a thought, keep it to yourself. Because if you really can't say it to someone's face, I don't think it's good to post it on social media.
Agreed. Just to add what Eric said, and just to tie it in with what Sean had experienced as far as the Tesla community was concerned about saying, well, guns blazing, as you say. And I think it really ties into the fact that the Tesla community, the ones that have been online, have been suffering under this Tesla Q crowdsourced negativity for so long that a lot of us have developed this really hypersensitive BS detector. And when Nikola comes around, it just sets it off. And all of us are like, holy cow, these guys are trying to short a company that are trying to do a good thing. They're not fraudulent or whatever. And they're directing all this negative energy at this company when we've got a perfectly good company over here that's just so full of it. And I think people are just confused and they're upset. And they see this as an opportunity to inflict that kind of behavior on something that they feel is justified. Now, I'm not saying it's justified. I'm just saying that that's just the way I read it, right? So much negativity on something that's supposed to be good, directed at the wrong place, and then we have a real live company that you should be shorting over here. I'm talking about the people that want to short stocks. I mean, how are you bugging us when you've got something like this over here? So I think a lot of the people are just, they saw an opportunity. And the other thing too is, just what Eric said, in a lot of cases, sometimes if you put a keyboard in front of somebody and there's some relative anonymity on the internet, sometimes people's true colors really come out. Mm-hmm. You can have a conversation with somebody in face-to-face, and boy, I tell you, 99% of what you're thinking would never come out of your mouth. But for some reason on the internet, you can say whatever you want because there's no consequences. So I'm sorry, Sean, that you had to suffer through that. We had a whole bunch of, a real, period of toxicity, if you will. And yeah, you're right. We're largely past that now. I hope to God that we don't have another recurrence of this stuff, but you never know. So yeah, absolutely. With Ian said, that he held his composure, and that's really good. And that's the Sean I know. He's very level-headed and stuff. So,
and I think too, to add to that, lastly, is if the leaders of these companies weren't in the sphere, this media sphere, so often, because I mean, how often is the executives at Nissan or Honda, like they're just other automakers? While there are some like Bob Lutz, there are some who still find their way into the news, but if you're not, if people aren't grabbing for a story all the time, then the armies that are on either side of this battle don't come out. If Elon was just a very low-key executive, and he wasn't Elon as we know him, then Tesla, I think, by and large, would be very different in terms of how they're perceived by many in the atmosphere outside of the EV enthusiasts. Whether you're a shorter or not, or whether you're an owner or not, I mean, there's just a very different response to that. And I think the demeanor in which they carry themselves is itself a story, and then everything trickles down from that. So it's a lot of it, I think, is part of that too.
Rivian is a really great example. Rivian and Nikola have yet to put vehicles into production. They're early stage startup, and they both have a lot to prove. But the big difference between Trevor and RJ is striking. It's night and day. Mm-hmm. You have one CEO that doesn't want to be in the limelight, that wants to let the product speak for itself. And then you have the other who tries to sort of stir up interest in the company and get ahead of itself and promise more than than what they're prepared to deliver. And Rivian has stayed away for the most part from any sort of controversy, minus the trade secret stuff with hiring Tesla employees. But I think that there's something to be said about just being quiet, focusing on building a great product, and letting that product speak for itself. And Rivian's not public, so maybe that's where they're avoiding a lot of the scrutiny. But I just don't hear very many people wish that Rivian would fail, like Nikola.
No, absolutely. Like I said, out of all the companies out there that I'd be interested in buying a product from, it really would be Rivian at this point. Listen, we're running short on time. I know you have to go. I just want to go through maybe a couple of questions here so that we
Sure.
can button this up a little bit. Someone on Twitter had asked us, and this is directed at you, Sean, given the lithium supply chain, how confident are you or other automakers will not be supply constrained over the next few years?
It's going to happen. Constraint, as it stands right now, is going to happen.
We're already seeing
There needs to be billions of dollars of investment into the industry now, today, and that's going to require large multi-billion-dollar companies, not just Tesla and not just battery makers like LG Chem and Panasonic. It's going to require traditional OEMs like Ford and GM who talk a big game, make some investments and accelerate it. The thing that you run into is you can't just snap your fingers and then a mine appears, right? It takes many years of research and feasibility studies and permit approvals. This was my one takeaway when I went to Piedmont Lithium a couple of weeks ago, and I need to publish my first video of 2 from that. But I think that's the big takeaway is there needs to be some significant investment. Can it happen? Yes, with enough money, it can certainly happen. You're going to need governmental support. You're going to need governments to remove the red tape and accelerate the permitting process for things like mines. But if EVs continue to grow exponentially, and you have these other large companies buying in to the idea of producing electric vehicles over their internal combustion counterparts, there's going to need to be some significant investments. That's why I think that in 10 or 20 years from now, we'll look back and see what a stroke of genius it was that Tesla did this battery day and laid out their strategy. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I got a phone call. So that's why I think when we look back in 10 to 20 years, Tesla will look like a stroke of genius when they laid out their battery day plans, which is essentially their master plan part 3. It's their master plan part 3 of how they're going to get to the next phase and how it's emphasizing and focusing on the early stage of batteries, the raw materials. I think that will be fundamental for companies who are really serious about producing electric vehicles. And it's a really strong indicator that if an automaker intends on producing hundreds of thousands and millions of EVs, you just simply need to look at what sort of time and energy and money are they putting into the early supply chain of batteries.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you 100% on that. The fundamental disconnect that I see with traditional auto as far as going to EVs is that they're not taking ownership of the battery. If you look at the way cars are manufactured these days, they do design of the cars, they do final assembly, bodies, final assembly, and engine. Everything else is farmed out. Engines is where they put a lot of R&D into. I mean, and we're talking a little improvements here and there as far as efficiency is concerned, but that they make their own engines. GM makes their own engines, Ford makes their own engines, Honda does, Toyota does. None of that stuff is farmed out. That's all made in-house. And unless they take ownership of the battery, of actually making their own batteries and not buying them from another person, then they're going to be left behind in a lot of ways. So it'll be interesting. I mean, and that's one thing that Tesla fundamentally understands. Yes, they had to partner with Panasonic at first, and now they are partnering, with LG Chem and the guys in China as well. But ultimately, they have to make their own cells. And yeah, absolutely. Battery day was pretty important as far as that's concerned. Okay, one more question. We'll let you go. Do you have any thoughts on NIO and Xpeng?
I don't follow Chinese companies as closely as I do American and European. So I don't really have much to add there, but I'd be curious to hear if you guys have any opinions about them.
I have an opinion on
I got nothing.
Xpeng. Xpeng just strikes me as not crazy innovative. Like, they're very copycat. If you look at what they did on the interior of the cars, they ripped off the Model S and the Model X interior. They did the Model X windshield thing. At one point they stole trade secrets as far as Tesla's autopilot stuff is concerned. They just strike me as a copycat rip-off company. I hope it's not the case, but from what I've seen, it's just like, okay, these guys are skating where the puck used to be instead of doing their own thing. But I don't know.
That's all I got.
Crickets.
NIO could be interesting. I think that's the only one out of China right now that's I sort of keep an eye on, because I think they're a little bit more advanced, and some of their ideas, some of the stuff they've shown is kind of cool. There's a whole slew. You can get into hundreds of these tiny little startups that are over there, because so many of them have been propped up by a huge amount of funding on the Chinese government.
I heard that there's something like 500 electric car startup companies in China alone. 500.
It's nuts.
It's crazy.
Well, they're just writing checks, right? It's like, oh, you want to start a car company? Here you go. Here you go. Here you go.
Well, none of them will survive.
Right, exactly. But I mean, one or two might. You never know.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Well, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the show, because I know that Sean has to get going. I want to say thank you, Sean, for joining us. We'll have to do this again, maybe under different circumstances. Since you're the guest on the show, you might as well go first and let everybody know how they can get a hold of you. You can plug whatever you want. YouTube channel. Floor is yours.
Yeah. I've got a YouTube channel where I talk about electric cars. I try and spread out the love, but inevitably what people want to hear is they want to hear me talk about Tesla. And people care about that.
He's a real estate agent too, so if you're in the Denver area, reach out to him.
Right. Yeah. That's actually an interesting story, how these two interests of mine are converging into one. It's a really odd thing, but strangely enough, people who watch the YouTube channel about electric cars end up reaching out to me here in Denver and asking for real estate help. So
that's good.
It's an interesting and fun story. And of course, owning an electric car, charging it at home, and adding solar. There's a very natural complement to both of those worlds that I'm in. Yeah. So I do real estate. If you want to reach out to me, maybe Twitter's the best way. Sean M. Mitchell at Sean M. Mitchell. I'm sure most people who are listening to this have at least heard of who I am and probably follow me on Twitter.
We'll put links in the video in the show description so people can find you, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on.
No problem. And gentlemen, where can we find you, Eric, if people want to have a chat with you?
First and foremost, now that we're in December, stay safe this holiday season. As my Chiron says down there, please wear a mask. No excuses. To all of our frontline health workers, thank you so much for everything you're doing. I know this is so difficult. Bless your hearts. I hope you all are remaining safe and your families are staying safe. Reminder again, quickly, you can get the 2021 Tesla calendar. Great stocking stuffer, honestly. Tesla owner, prospective Tesla owner, encourage them. Get the calendar. Goes to the Rails to Trails Conservatory. Again, our wonderful friend Ian Pavelko will promote this again shortly, but you got the Mad Hungarian Evolveware. I mean, his name is on the brand. That's sticking to the brand. You can find me on Twitter. The handle is ECFix. It's ECFIX. I'm largely not on Twitter anymore because you know what? Life is just kind of chaotic. But if you want to give me a follow, please do so. But again, most importantly, take care of each other. And if we don't talk to you again before the holiday season, happy holidays to one and all. Be safe.
Thank you. Ian, your turn.
And just to sort of link in, you'll see it in the show notes, but if you're looking for that calendar, the web address for the store is the Tess Calendar, all one word. So THETES calendar, all one word, .com. That's where you can order that.
Awesome.
And you can find me on Twitter. The handle is @IanPavelko. If you have any questions about wheels, tires, anything EV related, whatever, throw them out there. DMs are open.
sensors.
Model Y, don't get me started on Model Y TPMS, okay? A little bit of a sore spot. And of course, on the Tesla Owners Online Forum, if you have any question at all, God, there's not just me, there's an entire hive mind of people that can help you out. So be sure to, if you're not on there already, log yourself in, get yourself an avatar going, and you can find me there under the name Mad Hungarian. Again, glad to be of any help that I can to the community. And finally, as mentioned, I have my little Teespring store. If you go to Teespring, teespring.com, and look up Mad Hungarian Evolveware, you'll find my little collection of shirts, a portion of which the proceeds go to various EV organizations.
Excellent. Well, I guess that leaves me. So you can follow me on Twitter. The handle is Tesla Owners Online, and check out the forum, teslaownersonline.com. Best place to be talking about Tesla stuff if you have lots of questions. I mean, we have 45,000 members or something like that. Anyways, it's crazy. Anyways, that's it for today, and I want to say thank you again, Sean, for joining us on the show, and we'll have to do it again.
Yes.
All right, guys, that's it. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching and listening.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bonsoir tout le monde.
Wear your mask.